My ex used my salary to cover her luxury lifestyle, then dumped me for a richer guy, so I ghosted her, and now she's losing everything slowly. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and for most of my life, I believed love meant supporting the person you care about, no questions asked. Jenna and I had been together for about 2 years, and I thought I knew exactly what that meant. Being there, financially, emotionally, and in every small way that mattered. She loved the finer things, designer handbags, dining at the trendiest restaurants, weekend trips to places I could barely pronounce. At first, I didn't mind. I thought it was part of giving, part of showing her that I cared. Every month, I paid our rent, covered groceries, and quietly slipped a few surprise gifts onto her doorstep. She never asked, I never complained, and for a while, it felt like happiness. Jenna would gush, brushing her fingers over a new scarf or a small necklace I bought her. "You're the sweetest," she'd say, her eyes lighting up like I'd given her the world. But sometimes, between bites of avocado toast or while scrolling through her phone, she'd casually drop lines like, "One day, we'll live like people who really have money," or "Imagine if we could travel anywhere without worrying about budgets." I brushed it off at first, assuming it was just dream talk, harmless fantasies of someone who worked hard but appreciated the little luxuries. I never realized that those tiny comments were planting seeds, little hints of expectations that would later grow into something that felt like a noose around my neck. My friends, though, weren't so blind. They'd whisper, usually when Jenna wasn't around, that she seemed a little too focused on material things. "Dude, she's ambitious with her lifestyle," one friend had joked once. I laughed it off, told myself they were just jealous or didn't understand our relationship. But every time Jenna smiled and said she had something big coming soon, a tiny knot of unease formed in my stomach. I didn't know it yet, but that big news would change everything, and not in the way I had imagined. Things started changing slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. I noticed Jenna becoming a little more secretive with her phone, stepping out to take calls, texting rapidly, and sometimes laughing softly when I wasn't around. At first, I shrugged it off. "She's just busy," I told myself. "Everyone has private moments." But the little things began piling up. She would disappear for hours with vague excuses, study group, meeting with a friend. And yet the way she smiled when she returned sometimes didn't quite reach her eyes. I tried asking casually, "Everything okay?" But she'd wave me off with a playful, "You worry too much." I believed her, or maybe I wanted to. Then there were the bills. At first, I didn't mind picking up the tab for her expensive lunches or the weekend getaway she deserved. I convinced myself it was just part of being a caring boyfriend, a way to make her happy. But one evening, as I went through our shared account to balance finances, I realized she had spent nearly double on things she hadn't mentioned: designer bags, online shopping, even a last-minute flight to a city she'd only vaguely referenced. I felt that familiar knot tighten in my chest, the one you get when something feels off, but you can't quite name it. I wanted to confront her, but couldn't find the right words. I told myself I might be overreacting. A few friends tried nudging me gently. "Man, she seems a little too into the finer things," one said. "Are you sure she's not taking advantage?" I laughed nervously. "No, you don't get it. She's just ambitious," I insisted, even though a part of me was quietly uneasy. And then, as if on cue, Jenna leaned in one night, her eyes sparkling with excitement, and whispered, "Something big is happening soon. You're going to love it." I smiled back, trying to match her enthusiasm, but inside I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the edge of something I didn't fully understand yet. The excitement Jenna carried around began to feel heavier than it should have. Every time she talked about trips, new outfits, or nights out with friends, I started noticing a subtle edge in her tone, a kind of impatience if I hesitated to agree or contribute. I tried to ignore it, telling myself I was just being sensitive, that maybe I was imagining things. But deep down, I couldn't shake the sense that her gratitude wasn't enough. It was like a mask, a way to justify a lifestyle she had no intention of earning herself. I kept thinking about all the weekends I spent extra hours at work just to cover her whims, the late-night deliveries I picked up, and the constant effort to make her feel safe and spoiled. And yet, it was never quite enough. She started dropping hints more openly, too. One evening, while scrolling through Instagram, she pointed at a friend's vacation photos and sighed. "Wouldn't it be amazing to just live like that? No worries, no limits. I nodded, smiling, trying to hide the flicker of unease creeping up my chest. Another time, she joked, "You know, one day we'll meet someone who matches our ambition." But the way she said it lingered in my mind long after. Even her friends began making subtle comments, little jokes about dreaming big and knowing what she deserves. I told myself it was harmless teasing. I wanted to believe it was harmless. But then the first really unsettling thing happened. Jenna asked me to cover a last-minute purchase for a designer bag she said she had to have for an upcoming work event. It wasn't cheap. I hesitated, just for a moment, and she tilted her head, smiling with that sweet, almost calculating grin. "Come on, don't you want me to feel special?" My chest tightened, a mix of pride and discomfort flooding me. I paid, of course. I always did, but a small, nagging thought wormed its way in. Maybe I wasn't just helping her. Maybe I was being used. And yet, she whispered again that night, her eyes gleaming. "You're going to love what's coming soon. It's going to change everything." I smiled, but my stomach sank. I didn't realize just how true that would become, but not in the way I wanted. It all came crashing down one evening when I stumbled across her messages by accident. My heart sank as I scrolled through conversations that made my stomach twist, flirty texts, secret dinner plans, jokes about a new guy who can actually afford her lifestyle. At first, I couldn't believe it. I stared at my phone, frozen, the room suddenly feeling too small, the hum of the refrigerator too loud. The woman I thought I knew, the one I had given everything to, my time, my money, my heart, was living a lie right in front of me. I felt anger, disbelief, and an almost paralyzing sadness all at once. When I confronted her, I tried to keep my voice steady, but it cracked halfway through. "Jenna, what is this? Who is he?" I asked, holding the phone like it was evidence in a crime scene. She looked at me with wide eyes, a flicker of something like amusement crossing her face before she masked it with charm. "You're overreacting," she said softly, reaching for my hand. "I don't know why you're making a big deal. You've done so much for me already." Her words weren't comforting. They were venom disguised as sweetness. I reached out for explanations, but she gaslit me, turning the story around. "I've always appreciated you," she said, her voice calm, almost rehearsed. "But maybe I need someone who really understands ambition, someone who can match me fully." That hit like a punch to the gut. I realized that every late-night text, every surprise gift I'd given, every hour I'd spent working extra to fund her whims, it had all been exploited. A wave of betrayal crashed over me. Friends confirmed my fears in hushed tones. Jenna had been bragging online about her upgrade, laughing with mutual friends about how I covered everything. The midpoint twist hit like a freight train. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was manipulated, made a fool in front of everyone I knew. That night, Jenna smiled at me, eyes sparkling, and whispered, "You'll see. Soon everything changes." I forced a nod, but inside, my stomach churned. I knew, deep down, that nothing would ever be the same, and the next move would define everything. After that night, I couldn't look at Jenna the same way again. Every smile felt hollow, every laugh a dagger twisting in my chest. I spent days pacing my apartment, replaying moments I had cherished, our weekend trips, the dinners I paid for, the small surprises I thought she loved. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore. It felt like my identity, my generosity, had been weaponized against me. For the first time, I realized I didn't have to be part of her game anymore. I started pulling back quietly. No confrontation, no shouting matches, just silence. I stopped answering her texts immediately, let calls go to voicemail, and avoided seeing her in person. The first night I ignored her, she messaged me relentlessly. "Why are you being distant? Did I do something wrong?" My stomach twisted reading it, but I didn't respond. Every message I didn't answer felt like reclaiming a little bit of the power she had stolen. Friends noticed the shift too. "Are you okay, man?" one asked. I shrugged, forcing a smile. I didn't want to explain that I had finally realized I was done being a safety net for someone who didn't care about me. Jenna escalated quickly. Friends reported she was asking around about me, trying to see why I had gone cold. The manipulation was still there, but now I could see it for what it was, and for the first time, it scared her that I wouldn't play along. That night, as I sat alone in my dimly lit apartment, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. I knew I'd be ghosting her completely, cutting off the part of my life that had been toxic for months. And yet, even as relief began to seep in, there was a pit in my stomach, the uncertainty of what would happen next, the tension of watching her unravel from afar. I didn't know it then, but this quiet withdrawal would trigger the beginning of her slow, inevitable downfall. Once I ghosted her, the change was almost immediate, though I didn't witness it firsthand at first. Word got back to me through friends. Jenna was struggling to maintain her lifestyle without me footing the bills. The vacations she had bragged about were canceled, designer orders went unpaid, and her social media posts started looking different. The sparkle was gone. The confidence that had always been a little intimidating now felt like desperation. It was hard not to feel a small, guilty satisfaction, because for once, the consequences were on her, not me. I started hearing stories from friends who had been close to her. She was frantically calling her new wealthy fling for money, complaining about expenses, panicking over bills she hadn't paid. She even tried to get favors from people I knew, pretending she was struggling, charming them with the same smile she had once used on me. I could almost see her frantic energy through the words of my friends, running around trying to patch holes she had created herself. I felt my chest tighten, a mixture of vindication and sorrow for what had once been a person I loved. I couldn't help but remember all the nights I had stayed late at work just to make sure she got what she wanted, the weekends I'd canceled trips with my own friends to fund hers. The thought of her scrambling now made me feel lighter, like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had finally lifted. Still, there was a strange tension, because part of me wondered if she'd somehow try to retaliate, or if this was the calm before a storm. That evening, as I sat on my couch, the city lights faintly glowing through my window, I felt a quiet sense of anticipation. I didn't check her social media, didn't ask around. I just let it happen, observing from a distance. The slow unraveling of her carefully constructed world had begun, and I knew, deep down, this was only the beginning of her crash. By the time I started hearing more concrete stories, Jenna's spiral was well underway. She had missed rent payments, arguments with friends over unpaid debts were becoming public, and her carefully curated social media posts were starting to look like a facade. I kept hearing snippets from mutual friends. She was snapping at people who tried to help, showing the same manipulative streak I had known, but now it was turning against her. It was strange watching it all from the sidelines, part vindication, part disbelief. The person I had poured myself into, the one I had believed in, was unraveling right in front of me. One night, a friend called me in almost a whisper. "She's desperate. She posted something online, trying to make it look like she's fine, but it's sad, man. People are noticing." I felt a cold twist in my stomach. That was the moment I realized how deep her downfall had become. She had always relied on appearances, on the illusion that she had it all together, but without me, there was nothing holding it up. I remembered the nights I had been manipulated, the guilt trips she had thrown at me, and the way I had tried to rationalize her behavior. Now, it was backfiring on her. Even from a distance, I could feel the tension in her actions. Mutual friends mentioned she was trying to secure favors, leaning on her new wealthy fling, begging for loans, even embarrassing herself in front of people who had once admired her. And yet, there was no direct confrontation from her toward me. I had taken myself out of the game completely, and that silence was more potent than any argument could have been. Sitting alone, listening to the hum of my apartment and the distant sounds of the city, I realized how heavy the burden had been that I had carried unknowingly. Watching her fall was bittersweet, but there was also a strange sense of peace, like the universe was quietly correcting the imbalance. I had stepped back, and now the consequences were hers alone. The fallout from Jenna's lifestyle started hitting harder than I expected. Her new wealthy fling, the one she had quickly jumped to after me, began seeing cracks in her story. Friends mentioned he'd started questioning her about unpaid bills, canceled reservations, and the little lies she always seemed to tell with a smile. I couldn't help but smirk a little. It was ironic how quickly the tables had turned. She had spent so long building this image of control and charm, but now, the very charm she had wielded against me was being used against her. At the same time, stories from mutual friends revealed something even more shocking. Apparently, Jenna had a history of using men for financial gain. One after another, a pattern so blatant that it made my blood run cold thinking how blind I had been. I kept recalling our 2 years together, the sacrifices I had made, the nights I'd worked extra hours just to make her feel comfortable. Everything suddenly clicked. The hints, the jokes about a richer life, her impatience when things weren't glamorous enough. I had been a part of a much bigger story, a repeating cycle I had never noticed until now. Jenna, unaware that I had completely removed myself from her life, tried everything to patch up her crumbling image. She called friends, begged her new guy, and even tried posting on social media to create an illusion of stability. But the cracks were too deep. I felt a strange mix of vindication and pity, knowing firsthand how destructive manipulation can be, how easily someone can build a life on someone else's sacrifice, only for it to collapse when that support is gone. Sitting on my balcony that night, the city lights flickering in the distance, I felt both detached and quietly satisfied. The slow unraveling had begun in earnest, and I could almost see the dominoes falling, one by one. I didn't need to intervene, didn't need to confront her. The universe was handling it. And yet, a small part of me wondered how far this spiral would go before it truly broke her. By this point, Jenna's attempts to recover were failing spectacularly. Her social media posts, once flawless and enviable, were riddled with tension. Images of luxury vacations replaced by awkward selfies in messy apartments or half-empty rooms. Friends and acquaintances began sharing whispers about unpaid bills, canceled reservations, and promises she couldn't keep. It was surreal to hear it from people who barely knew the full story, yet every detail confirmed what I had long suspected. The slow burn of karma was unfolding before my eyes, and I couldn't look away. Jenna, desperate to regain some control, tried reaching out to mutual friends, painting herself as the victim of circumstance. "I just need a break," she claimed. Everything went wrong so fast. But no one believed her anymore. The charm she had once wielded to manipulate me, to bend situations to her advantage, was useless now. I thought back to how she used to guilt-trip me over money, over time, over attention, everything I had given freely. Now, it was painfully clear that nothing I had done could have saved her from the consequences of her choices. From my vantage point, I began reflecting on the emotional toll she had taken on me. Nights spent worrying about her moods, weekends sacrificed to fund her whims, and every little act of kindness twisted into leverage. It had been exhausting, and part of me felt relief that I had finally stepped away. The rock-bottom moment of my realization hit. I understood how deep her manipulation had gone, and how close I had come to losing not just money but a piece of myself. Even as I watched her struggle from afar, I felt detached, calm, and strangely empowered. There was no gloating, only quiet acknowledgement that the balance had shifted. She could scream, beg, or manipulate all she wanted, but I wasn't part of her life anymore. The slow unraveling continued, and I knew that every misstep she made now was entirely of her own making. Consequences she had chosen by her actions. After watching Jenna crumble from a distance, I finally allowed myself to focus on my own life again. For months, I had been exhausted, emotionally drained, financially stretched, constantly trying to maintain a relationship that had become a one-way street. Now, without her chaos pulling me down, I started rebuilding. Small things at first, like catching up on sleep, enjoying quiet mornings with coffee, and reconnecting with friends I had neglected. I even started putting money aside for myself, the way I had always done for her. The relief was palpable, almost intoxicating. But the real shift wasn't just financial, it was mental. For the first time in years, I felt free from guilt and manipulation. I didn't answer her messages, didn't check her social media, and didn't care what she was up to. Her frantic attempts to secure money from friends and her new fling continued, but they didn't touch me anymore. I realized how empowering it felt to step back completely, to let the consequences of her actions unfold without me intervening. It wasn't completely easy. Sometimes, I caught myself thinking about the moments we had shared, the laughs, the intimacy, the hope I had placed in her. But those memories no longer carried warmth. They were lessons. I understood now that loving someone didn't mean being their financial crutch or emotional punching bag. And as I rebuilt my world, I noticed something satisfying. Every time Jenna tried to manipulate her way out of a problem, she failed. Every missed payment, every angry call to a friend, every awkward confrontation with someone who knew her secrets. It was like watching justice in slow motion. That night, Sitting on my balcony, I breathed in the cool air and let the city hum fill the silence. For the first time, I felt unshakable, grounded in my own life, and free of the chaos that had once consumed me. Jenna's world was crumbling, but mine was finally rising. And the thought of never having to deal with her lies and manipulations again brought a sense of peace I hadn't known I was missing. It didn't take long before the consequences of Jenna's choices became public. Mutual friends began sharing stories, how she had lied about her debts, how she had used every man she knew to fund her lifestyle, how her new wealthy fling had finally cut ties after realizing the truth. The contrast between the image she had tried to create and the reality was jarring. People were no longer impressed with her social media posts or glamorous persona. They were laughing, gossiping, and quietly shaking their heads. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't in months, a sense of vindication. I heard about the desperate posts she had made online, pleading for help, twisting the story to make herself appear the victim. I could almost see her sitting there, panicked, realizing that the lies she had built her life on were collapsing like a house of cards. My friends warned me that she might try to reach out, to manipulate me again, but I knew better. I didn't respond. I didn't even think about it. The power she had once held over me was gone, and with it, the ability to control my emotions or my life. Reflecting on it all, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Satisfaction at seeing her face the consequences, sorrow for how much time and energy I had wasted, and finally, a sense of peace. I had walked away from someone who had been using me, and in doing so, I had reclaimed myself. She could scream, beg, or attempt manipulation endlessly, but it didn't matter anymore. My life was my own. The final act of poetic justice, I realized, wasn't anything I had done. It was simply letting her choices catch up to her. The humiliation, the financial struggles, the unraveling of her carefully curated image, those were hers alone to bear. I sat back, watching silently as the person who had once held so much control over me floundered in the life she had created. And for the first time, I felt truly free. By the time I fully closed the chapter on Jenna, I felt like I had reclaimed not just my life, but my self-worth. I blocked every possible way she could contact me, deleted old messages, and removed her presence from my social media. It wasn't about revenge anymore. She was already facing the consequences of her choices, but about finally being free. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up with a knot in my stomach, didn't second-guess my actions, and didn't feel the weight of someone else's manipulation pressing down on me. I had my peace, my space, and my life back. Rebuilding was gradual but empowering. I focused on myself, my career, my friends, and my passions, things I had neglected while trying to keep her world afloat. Every small victory, every new experience I enjoyed without guilt, reminded me how much of myself I had given away before. And every time I heard about her continued struggles, the debts, the fallout with friends, the public embarrassment, I didn't feel satisfaction in cruelty. I felt a quiet affirmation that I had made the right choice. She was facing the life she had chosen, and I was thriving in the life I had fought to protect. Looking back, I realized the most powerful lesson wasn't about her downfall, it was about my growth. I learned where my boundaries were, what true loyalty means, and that no amount of love justifies being used. I understood that walking away quietly, without a fight, without bitterness, could hurt a manipulator far more than confrontation ever could. Sitting on my balcony one evening, the city lights stretching endlessly before me, I finally smiled without guilt or fear. I felt lighter, freer, and more confident than ever. Life had returned to me in its full richness, and for the first time, I could imagine a future built on respect, honesty, and self-worth. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't anger, it's living well, and I was finally doing just that.